That's why Trump is on the verge of getting elected, reelected. Because when he was in office, there was a flourishing economy.
So what is it that has got Stephen A. Smith, let's just say that what he's doing right now is he is chirping. And I mean by chirping, he's beginning to tell you exactly how he really and truly feels. Now, before we get to this video, obviously you guys saw the amount of time it's going to take to do this video. It's going to be a relatively lengthy one, so make sure you guys stick around for the full piece. The thing is this right here about Stephen A. Smith, and I've done a couple of videos in the past couple of weeks on him. Okay, one video I gave him a W, of course, in yesterday's video, or two days ago I gave him an L. This one was on the situation involving the Commanders, Redskins, hiring Cliff Kingsbury to be the new offensive coordinator. Now, here's the thing, and I want to go ahead and say this. Stephen A. Smith created his podcast for the sole purpose that he can kind of like be a little bit more honest, a little bit more free, a little bit more open. I mean, ESPN is going to pay him just about anything and everything in the world to keep him right where he's at. The thing, however, is this here, though. Stephen A. can't fully be himself. If you've ever watched any of Kwame Brown's old content, which, of course, I'll try to link something in the description box so that way you guys can get a bit of an idea of exactly how he feels about the man. He always says something along the lines of his white daddy, his scripted talking points, his scripted lines, the things that Stephen A. Smith has to say on ESPN's First Take, because obviously Disney, who owns ESPN, they're obviously paying him to say the things they want him to say. Of course, he can still, do his own little debates and give his personal feelings from time to time, but he can't really and truly come out and tell you exactly how he really and truly feels. But the situation in New York City has got Stephen A. little bit, let's just say a little bit more honest than usual. Now, I'm going to play the first part for you guys. There's going to be a lot of breaks in this video. And what I mean by a lot of breaks is there's going to be a lot of responses, a lot of reactions to what he said. Don't worry, I'll link the full segment in the description box for you guys. It's roughly 13 minutes long, and I think I'm going to be responding to about 7 or 8 minutes of it. But you see, a lot of YouTube content creators that are out there talking about this said block or this said segment he had, they're only showing you guys roughly about 1.5 to 2 minutes of it. Now, I'm here to give you guys a little bit more. That's the reason why the video is a little bit longer. And not to mention, there's going to be a couple of updates at the very end. So make sure you guys stick around for the full video so that way you guys can get an idea of exactly how this entire thing is going to go and how the weekend is going to go as well. But let's go ahead and play this first part.
Trump's going to get reelected. Donald Trump's going to be the next president of the United States. If this kind of stuff that I'm reading continues to happen in American cities, Donald Trump is a shoo-in for re-election, even if he's a convicted felon. Now, that's a damn shame. But somebody got to say it, so I'm going to say it. Did you read the story coming out of New York City? Did you read it? Involving Mayor Adams, Eric Adams, who I'm a fan of, by the way. I like him. But I don't like the story that I read over the weekend. And I think it's a story that can't be ignored. And it's talking about how $53 million in prepaid credit cards are in the process of being distributed.
Now, really quick, the $53 million that Stephen A. Smith is talking about, he's talking about the $53 million in prepaid cards that are being given to migrants in the city of New York. Now, I have done a couple of videos recently on this. One of these was a video where he talked about 50 Cent and his little issue, basically saying that Trump may be the answer, calling out Democrats. And also at the exact same time, there was a video that I did recently on Kasparian's little epiphany on the migrant situation as far as the crime is concerned. And of course, I also released this video here yesterday, kind of following up on the crime situation. The crime situation I'm talking about is the migrants who beat up the 2 NYPD officers. And of course, those migrants who did this, they apparently found a way to skip bail because they didn't really get bail. They were only there for like maybe an hour or so. They were let out. They found their way to Arizona. Now, I'll link the video in the description box for you guys so that way you guys can see it. But the $53 million is basically Eric Adams' way of saying, here, we're just going to go ahead and hand out more and more benefits to the migrants who are coming over. And I've voiced my opinion on this, and I've told you guys exactly how I feel about this. I've done a lot of videos on the situation in Chicago, a lot of videos on the situation in New York, how it is that in Chicago, one of the migrant shelters can't actually be, let's just say, fully implemented, meaning that people can't stay there until the Environmental Protection Agency steps in and actually deems the area good. I'll try to just know that the description box of this video is going to be full of videos that I've done detailing exactly all the problems and, of course, all the news reports that show you the amount of problems that have come up as a result of the migrant crisis. But before we go any further, I want you guys to see this really quick. Okay, we're going to be going back to the past. And, of course, we're going back to the past because recent history indicates that if you talk about the migrants or if you talk about the migrants in a negative way, or you say the type of things that I normally say on the channel, just pointing out the obvious, because remember, if you criticize somebody, you're going to be called racist for it. So you might as well just go ahead and get used to saying, look, I'm just going to go ahead and tell the truth. Chances are you're probably going to get a take like this here.
He's the governor for the state of Texas. On Monday, that governor, Governor Abbott, signed a bill into law that will allow the police to arrest migrants who entered the U.S. illegally. This law, which takes effect in March, allows any Texas law enforcement officer to arrest people who are suspected of entering the country illegally. This is bad, ladies and gentlemen. And before I go a step further, there's an individual by the name of Krish, Krish, O'Mara.
Now, this right here was 3 weeks ago where he criticized Texas Governor Greg Abbott, and I can already hear people saying, look, Greg Abbott's the one sending these migrants across the country. Okay, let's go ahead and smash a couple of myths here. Number one, if Joe Biden wanted to have these migrants go to these cities, he could have them go to these cities. I mean, Joe Biden refuses to close the border, correct? And of course, Greg Abbott, he's sending the migrants to these areas, these blue cities, because they're all sanctuary cities, and they all say that they wanted the migrants. I remember back in 2019, they got into it with former President Trump over this, and former President Trump said, you know what, if you're going to sit here and complain about the migrant situation, how about I just send these migrants to your cities? And of course, these blue city mayors, they chose to say, no, we don't want them, for the exception of Lori Lightfoot, the mayor of Chicago at the time. Of course, she lost her re-election bid, so that makes you wonder what the hell is going on there. But the thing is simply this right here. Basically, what's going on is these people are being called out on their hypocrisy. However, here's the thing. I just said that Biden, if he wanted these migrants to go there, he would have them go there. However, if Biden really and truly wanted these migrants not to go there, he could put a stop to this by simply closing the border, or he could put a stop to this by sending a cease and desist order to Greg Abbott, which of course he has sued Greg Abbott. And of course, Greg Abbott, being the gangster that he is, has said, you know what, man, screw this right here. I'm going to continue to put the Connex boxes up. I'm going to continue to put the concertina wire, which of course they tell you it's razor wire, but it's really concertina wire. It's not as sharp as you think. I'm just going to go ahead and just put it up and just close off the border. That's what Greg Abbott is doing. And of course, you've got 25 other Republican states or 25 other Republican governors who are trying to send National Guard down there to help out with the situation. Of course, Biden's Border Patrol, they have backed out. But now Stephen A. Smith is coming out here and basically saying that this right here was a mistake after saying that Greg Abbott or anybody who implements a policy that is against illegal immigration, just simply enforcing the laws in the books, is racist. Even though the $53 million that are going to these migrants to go on top of all the other benefits that's been given could have been given to the less fortunate in the city of New York, the less fortunate in the city of Chicago, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we have to hear this all the time that people of color make the least amount of money, which is actually true, especially in these cities. But now you're bringing over economic migrants who are going to be receiving benefits, getting the jobs that African Americans in these cities probably need, the additional benefits. And it makes you wonder why it is there's so much jealousy and so much division going on in these cities. And I've said this in several videos before, that the situation is probably only going to get worse. I mean, I'm going to point you to Nate the Lawyer. I'm going to point you to Sean Fitzgerald and all the other channels out there who cover this a lot more extensively, or a little bit more extensively, especially when it comes to the topic of crime. But once again, here we are. Let's watch a little bit more before we go further.
Problem if you're on the left. There's a big problem if you're on the right. No, it ain't that simple. We have to understand that we don't want people eating out of garbage cans. We don't want people starving. We don't want people separated from their children and children separated from their parents. We don't want this. We don't want to be cruel and inhumane. But illegal immigration has become incredibly pervasive since the Biden administration has taken office. We all know that he's capitulated to folks don't know how to act. It's not an accident that the former president keeps bringing up law and order, law and order, law and order, because those are catchwords. Those are the kind of things that make you go to the polls and vote out of fear. And it works. Throughout history, it has worked. But now this is a different kind of fear, but a fear tinged with frustration. Because when you hear about migrants receiving $53 million in prepaid credit cards, the Eric Adams administration in the mayor's office in New York City will tell you it's going to save about $600,000 a month. But that's not how poor people are looking at it. You know what black poor people are looking at it like? You know what Latinos who happen to be poor that arrived in this country are looking at it like? Where that money come from us? I could have used it. I could use the extra $500 a month. I could use the extra $1,000 a month. I could do that. They want to sit up there. I just want to read some of this stuff.
Now, his daughter being there, I don't think that's much of an issue, but still at the same time, I think that Stephen A. is probably beginning to see this. He's probably beginning to hear a lot of, let's just say a lot of chatter that are coming to him. What I mean by chatter is probably family members and friends saying, look, man, you know, you talk about this way, but you're not really and truly here. You're not exactly seeing what it is that we're seeing. Now, there's something I want to say before I go any further. There was a news report that came out roughly about 8 or 9 months ago. I'm going to play a bit of this for you. And the reason why I'm going to play a bit of this for you is because it's going to come up a little bit later on in the video. But I want to go ahead and get this point across now. $53 million are being paid to these migrants who are coming over illegally. You're getting all kinds of additional benefits. Of course, in the videos that I've done on Chicago, you obviously got all this craziness, all this jealousy going on, especially amongst blacks and Hispanics, of course, over the benefits. And of course, there's also stories such as Thanksgiving turkeys being stolen, people jumping the line, people stealing inside these migrant shelters. But here's the one that really bothers me. Now, granted, it's an old story, but it's definitely relevant today.
We've uncovered a massive waste of food paid for by the public, as one would expect from a sanctuary city like New York. So how is this happening? We're talking bags of food tossed into the garbage.
This in a city where lots of people could use that food. Here's someone on your side, investigative reporter Kristen Thorne.
This is insane. This is fresh. This is good food. This is bags and bags of food being thrown away.
Workers at the Row Hotel in Midtown say it's a nearly everyday occurrence.
We throw away food that is perfectly fine.
The 1,300-room hotel is being used exclusively as a shelter for migrants, some of whom are seeking asylum.
This is completely sad.
This is a waste. We wasted a lot of food. We got homeless in New York City.
Felipe Rodriguez works in the housekeeping department at the hotel and told us about the food being thrown out.
Bagels is just going to waste.
He says this is the delivery the city makes to the hotel every day, 3 times a day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Fruit, water, and sandwiches are also available on every floor. Rodriguez says workers have spoken with hotel management about the amount of food being thrown out.
We have complained rigorously about the waste of
Now, I want you to remember exactly what you just saw just then, because it's going to come back up in a few minutes in this video. The reason why is because obviously if food, and I mean if food is being tossed out, if food's being provided to these migrants who are being given shelter in the Roosevelt Hotel, it's a pretty expensive place. If they're being given this food and the food's being tossed out, it makes you wonder, could this food be used, I don't know, maybe for people who are homeless? Homeless people eat it. I mean, nice little joke about people who are homeless, and I'm not here to rag on the homeless, and don't worry, we'll talk about the homeless more in this video. is that something like, say, an apocalyptic scenario would be just a good old-fashioned inconvenience, just a minor inconvenience for these people. But then you got people who can't get a meal, or people who can't really afford a meal, yet these $11 meals that are being made by hotel staff, being made by volunteers. By the way, I have to constantly remind people who rail against the rich that the people who donate the most amount of money to charity are people who do, in fact, have money, meaning that they are wealthy. But we'll get back to this here in a second.
And every time you turn around, particularly in states like Texas and Arizona, and to a lesser degree, California, it is an extreme problem. Well, guess where else it's a problem? It's a problem in New York City, my home. And I got to tell you something right now. If it wasn't for my daughter, I want to read some of this stuff to you because I want to make sure that we put it in its proper context. New York City will soon launch a $53 million pilot program to hand out prepaid credit cards to migrant families housed in hotels, according to the report. The New York Post has reported that 500 migrant families at the Roosevelt Hotel will receive prepaid cards to help them buy food. The program is intended to replace the current food service provided there. The Post choose an extra $1,000 a month. I can do that. They want to.
Now, I'll let that one run just a little bit longer, and here's the reason why I let it run just a little bit longer. Have you guys ever heard the expression, facts don't care about your feelings? I know I'm borrowing from Ben Shapiro, and even though me and Ben agree about 9% of the time, I don't really care for him too much because of the squeaky voice and the way he comes off. But still, at the same time, though, he's actually telling the truth. Now, the Biden administration loves to tell us, and don't worry, we'll get to the fear side. We'll get to the thing about fear here in a second. But the Biden administration loves to tell us that the economy is great. Is the economy really truly great? Okay, you're paying roughly about $1.50 more per gallon of gas, especially if you're driving from said distance to distance. And I understand that in New York City, a lot of people take public transportation, but that's gone up in price too. Something else too, and I kind of got red pill on this one. Well, I wouldn't say it was actually red pill. I'd say I'd probably always knew the answer. I just couldn't, for whatever reason, it just didn't register. In New York City, people take the subway. Okay, public transportation. Now, the subway is where a lot of crimes are going on right now. And people are obviously living in some form of fear, especially if you live, say, like in the Bronx, or if you live in Brooklyn, or if you live like in Queens. Obviously, it's not going to be as chummy as what it is in Manhattan. But still, though, the cost of living, the crime, of course, the migrant situation, the fact that everything is through the roof, the price of bread, the price of eggs, kind of like what I was saying earlier about the whole food situation. We're giving out free food to these migrants, but yet here it is, these migrants who, well, and technically it's free food for them, but of course the people who made the food, like I said, it's about $11 a pop for those meals. They're throwing it away because they require a special diet, which I don't think they should require a special diet because, quite frankly, if I can eat a McDonald's hamburger, you can eat a McDonald's hamburger. You see, basically these people have been given just a good old-fashioned red carpet to basically have whatever they want. And for the most part, they're spitting in the face of those who actually provide for them, or those who are actually helping provide for them. Of course, this right here is liberal logic. These are the people who actually wanted this to occur, the people who are actually okay with the sanctuary city policies, not realizing the rampant crime, the stuff that comes along with it. I mean, basically, like I said, this is liberal logic 101. Stephen A. Smith, of course, is waking up this. Now, he's always been a Democrat. He always has been. But don't worry, we'll get to that here in a second because he did make a suggestion back in 2016 that will come back up in this video because it's definitely relevant because a lot of people think that it probably may be happening this time officially. But still, the thing is this right here. The situation in New York, especially when it comes to money, is that a lot of people are looking at this situation and looking at the amount of money that Eric Adams says that they're going to be saving. And I'll explain why they're doing this here in a second. Let's just say that these people could have used that cash. Now, $600,000 being saved in New York. In New York. This same city, by the way, just cut the next 5 police officer classes. Okay? They just cut that. You're going to need more cops. By the way, to all the defund the police crowd out there, the biggest reason why it is you never want to defund your police departments, and I've got to say this again, is because police departments are the ones who actually ensure that EMS and fire and rescue can do their job. You see, a lot of people didn't think about this during the whole defund the police movement. You see, anytime an ambulance is called to the scene of a location, the very first thing that an EMT or a firefighter is going to ask is the scene secure? I mean, think about it really quick. You go into Harlem, very, very rough neighborhood. You got to get to grandma. She's having a heart attack or she's in the middle of a stroke. You need to make sure that scene is safe. You need to make sure that scene is secure. So hopefully you'd have a few cops up there to make sure that you can actually go in there and get grandma and granddaddy out. Just figure I'd toss that out there. That's one of the biggest reasons why it is that defund the police was probably one of the dumbest things anybody ever came up with. But still, the thing you have to seriously consider in this situation about the money situation is exactly what he said and what he's about to say here again. But we'll get to the fear thing on the other side.
Food service provided there, the Post reported. A spokesperson for Eric Adams said, quote, "Not only will this provide families with the ability to purchase fresh food for their culturally relevant diets and the baby supplies of their choosing, but the pilot program is expected to save New York City more than $600,000 per month and more than $7.2 million annually. Here are the stipulations. Migrants eligible for the program must sign an affidavit stating they will only spend the funds on food and baby supplies or else they will lose access to funds," the report said. Another stipulation, the amount available to each family eligible for the program must sign an affidavit stating they will only spend the funds on food and baby supplies or else they will lose access to funds, the report said. Another stipulation, the amount available to each family depends on their size and how much income they are receiving, according to a contract reviewed by the Post. A family of 4 might be provided nearly $1,000 each month or $35 per day for food. If the pilot program is a success with the initial 500 migrant families, it'll be expanded to all migrant families staying in hotels, which is currently at $15,000, according to this report. More than 150,000 migrants have arrived in New York City since 2022, overwhelming city resources as Texas Governor Greg Abbott has bused asylum seekers to New York. Now, there are people who are absolutely appalled by that, playing around with lives. Fair enough. Mayor Adams has decried the bust arrivals as a humanitarian crisis and said that providing food and housing for the migrants will cost about $12 billion over 3 years. Adams traveled to Latin America on a tour to dissuade potential migrants in Mexico, Colombia, and Ecuador from attempting to come to the city, saying the city, quote, is at capacity, end quote. Let me say this to Mayor Eric Adams, who I respect.
You remember what I said earlier about food? You remember that? These people were given hotel rooms at the Roosevelt Hotel and all kinds of hotels in New York, and they were given free food, and they rejected the free food. Just think about it.
That may be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard a politician do. You're going to travel to a country that's starving, that's desolate, that's impoverished, that's desperate to come to the United States of America, and you're going to beg them not to cross borders into the United States and end up in New York City rather than going to politicians? That makes no sense. Right. That's about the worst plan I ever heard in my damn life. Why would they listen to you if they're desolate and starving and in desperate need? So much so that they come here, and even for $1,000 a month, that's exponentially better than whatever conditions they're facing in their respective countries. Why would they listen? It comes down to us and being able to work together as a nation, and clearly that's not the case. And so when you have this kind of mayhem going on, which, by the way, doesn't surprise me at all because it's an election year. And usually this stuff gets highlighted and illuminated even more during election time. That's how they like it. So you can pick and choose. What it came down to for me is this. I see homeless folks in the streets of New York all the time. Two jobs to pay the same prices or to buy the same amount of stuff that you used to buy, and the price is higher than it used to be because of inflation. Then guess what? What are you really accomplishing? That's why Trump is on the verge of getting reelected. Because when he was in office, there was a flourishing economy. There was a whole bunch of other problems.
Now, really quick, before I let Stephen A. finish that off and say exactly what it is that he's about to say, because it's actually, quite frankly, pretty daggone rich. Let's go through this one more time. So, the money issue, the amount of money that's not going to the people who need the money, the people who actually live there, the actual people who actually are residents of the city, residents of this country. Never mind the homeless veterans out there. I mean, as a veteran myself, obviously, I brought this up before. Never mind the homeless veterans. People who actually serve the country, fought for the country, actually love the country, actually loyal to the nation. Never mind them. The fact that the police department has cut the next, oh, I forgot to tell you, I forgot to mention this, but there's also sanitation. Sanitation has also been cut too. Oh my God, New York City is really and truly about to stink. And by the way, a lot of these migrant shelters don't have facilities to allow migrants to clean themselves. I mean, take a shower, take a bath, all kinds of stuff like that there. I mean, it's about to become a very nasty situation. The crime at Randall Island, the crime throughout the entire city, the fact that we've had a couple of criminals literally beat the hell out of a couple of cops, beating the hell out of a cop. Actually, it's 4. Somehow or another, they got away because Alvin Bragg, the district attorney of New York, doesn't believe in actually prosecuting people. They end up in Arizona where they're going to be prosecuted there. Of course, you've got people saying you need to deport them, and I would love to do that. But the problem is this, right? If you deport these people, they're just going to come right back through the border again because Biden is a weakling. And obviously, Biden does, in fact, have an agenda, which I'll cover a little bit later on because Stephen A., once again, is not going to mention. He's not going to talk about it. But think about the strain of the people who live in the city of New York, those who actually were born and raised in the country, those who, quite frankly, are in poor situations. I understand. Look, I'm as big-time pro-capitalist as you can get, and I do understand safety nets. By the way, I'm not somebody who believes in welfare or anything like that. But as a guy who's been laid off from work before, as a guy who's had to reach out and grab unemployment before, I'm pretty sure most of my audience has at some point in time because your age, according to my demographics, is not that different than mine. Obviously, safety nets are in place. You need the hand up. I'm not in favor of handouts. I'm in favor of hand up. But still, at the same time, though, a lot of these people really and truly can't help their situation. So you're bringing in more and more people who, quite frankly, the minute they get here, are just going to cause more and more problems. And, of course, they're going to call you racist for this. But as I've said before, they're going to call you that anyway. So you might as well just go ahead and get used to telling the daggone truth and go ahead and accept the fact that this is what these people do. And one more thing, too, and I forgot to mention this earlier about the fear factor. I don't think it's fear at this moment in time anymore. When they say law and order or these buzzwords, I don't think it's fear anymore when the actual buzzwords themselves are definitely right for the situation, right for the actual cause itself. But let's watch a little more.
This is what I'm talking about. And so when you have something like that, what's the one way to eradicate it? Yes, you got to have a flourishing economy. Yes, you can't have inflation. Yes, you can't be on the verge of a recession. Milk don't need to cost $7. Bread don't need to cost $5. Don't get me started with how much sugar costs. You can talk about employment all you want to. You can talk about the labor participation rate. But guess what? If you ain't making no damn money.
I let it play a little bit longer, okay? I let it play a little bit longer for a reason, okay? I let it play a little bit longer so that way you guys can see exactly how he's building up, how he's hulking up. You know, how it is that he's all upset now, how it is that he thinks that what Eric Adams is doing is absolutely stupid. I want you to know something right now, though. At some point in time in the next couple of days, probably seeing how it is that tomorrow is Friday, and this video will be out on Friday, it'll probably be maybe Monday or Tuesday. Stephen A. Smith will probably be out here saying that it's racist once again to be against these illegals who are coming over, even though the illegals are cutting off his own. Now, I want to say this before we go any further. I did a bit of a preamble video explaining the Rainbow Coalition and identity politics. Identity politics never works. You see, the Democratic Party, what they typically tend to do is they typically tend to go after single-issue voters. Those single-issue voters typically tend to be minority voters. Republicans, on the other hand, they have to stick closer to their ideology, okay? They have to run closer and closer and closer to their ideology through the primary process. The only person who was able to get away with not doing that was actually Trump. And, of course, he was able to get elected. The thing is this right here, though. Democrat politicians, they would pander to certain groups, like, for example, the LGBTQ. So LGBTQ rights, gay marriage, and, of course, after that right there, they'll say, okay, well, abortions for the trans. That's what they'll say. Black people, they'll say voting rights, even though you're constitutionally allowed to go vote, all that type of stuff there. By the way, New York State's got stricter voting laws than my home state of North Carolina. I'm just saying it right now. Like, they actually require you to have an ID. Just saying that there. So just go ahead and know that the voter ID thing that the Democratic Party runs their mouth about is a bunch of BS, okay? It's just the way that it is. A lot of hypocrisy here. They always accuse you of what it is that they're guilty of. Just figure out, go ahead and put that out there. So other things, of course, this pathway to citizenship for Hispanics. Basically what it is single-issue voters. However, after a while, the coalition of single-issue voters, they began to get jealous and upset with one another. It kind of goes back to the comedy special that Dave Chappelle did on why it is that lesbians don't like gays, gays don't like T's, T's don't like B's, T's don't like G's, that type of thing there. At the end of the day, it just completely falls apart. Now, there'll be a bigger project on that at a later date. But I wanted to say that before we go any further. But there is one more thing that I do want to show you guys before we let Stephen A. end this entire thing out. Back in 2015, 2016 timeframe, Stephen A. Smith went on CNN and he was saying a completely different tune.
Democrats, African Americans, all of the above?
I'd go with all of the above. That sounds about right. But specifically the Democratic Party, from the standpoint that I definitely believe that the black vote has been taken for granted. And primarily the black community is at fault, in my estimation, in that regard, simply because on one hand, we're giving one party our vote because they've successfully gone about the business of convincing our community that the other party, the Republican Party, is completely against the interest of the black community. And as a result, we've been very transparent in our support. We've boarded hook, line, and sinker. We look at the Republican Party. I'm not talking about every single one of us, of course, but vast majority of black Americans look at the Republican Party as the enemy. We look at the Democratic Party, even tacitly, as our support base. And as a result, we are very transparent in our support for them. So because of it, they have a license to take us for granted. The Republican Party has a license to summarily dismiss us because they believe they'll never get our vote anyway. And then we end up finding ourselves devoid of any kind of representation whatsoever because nobody is really competing to garner our vote and our support. So I said what I said because I wanted folks in my community to stand up and recognize that if you go to a house or you go buy a car or whatever the case may be, you don't just see something you want and say, I want that. Tell me what the price is and I'll pay for it. Somebody has to flatter you in order to garner your dollars and your support. I think the same should apply to politicians.
The reason why I played that is because it's very possible that you may see Stephen A. Smith. Well, he'll never do it on ESPN. But you may see Stephen A. Smith come out. And when I mean come out, he may come out and say we should all vote Republican just to get the current crop of Democrats out to hold the Democratic Party accountable. But let's let this little thing go ahead and finish off, and I'll tell you exactly what Stephen A. Smith will never tell you because either A, he doesn't know, or B, he does know, and maybe he's had some, some strike of conscience or whatever. Now, let me say this before I get to the final portion of this video. You obviously heard that. He thinks Trump's going to get elected, okay? He thinks that Trump's going to get elected. And there is one more thing to play. He thinks Trump's going to get elected. Now, me personally, as a Trump voter, you think I'd probably agree with him. I actually think he will too, but I don't think we're going to make an actual prediction. I think this situation is a lot different than what it was in 2020, but let me also say this too. I talked about facts over feelings earlier, but I didn't really follow up on it, but I'm going to go ahead and follow up on it now. Fear is based upon what the voter is feeling at that time. If the voters feel disenfranchised by the current regime, more likely than not, they're probably going to vote him out. That's probably what's going to happen. When you factor in crime, when you factor in inflation, they tell you that the price, they tell you that the economy is great, yet people are working part-time jobs, like Stephen A. said. That's really the real reason why it is that the unemployment rate's as low as it is, because people are taking out 2 and 3 jobs, only working 10 to 20 hours a week. And of course, the hourly pay may be high, but still at the same time, they're not doing it to make ends meet, especially given all the prices and everything. The truth be told is this right here. People feel pretty daggone bad, and people, quite frankly, vote based upon how they feel. I could sit here and tell you why this right here is wrong, why that's wrong, why this statistic is completely off, why it's completely and totally bullshit, it's bogus, whatever. But if people feel some form of fear, then quite frankly, guess what? They're going to vote how they're feeling. And what Stephen A. is doing is he's tapping into how black people feel right now, which I personally think, honestly, even if Stephen A. has never really said it, not till now, but I think he's about to have that moment. But there is one more thing that does need to be pointed out.
Impoverished, starving people who were born and raised in this nation. How in the hell do we come up with a $53 million pilot program for illegals, but folks who are here legally are born here, we don't have enough of them? Just like we could come up with billions for Ukraine, but somehow, some way, we can't fix the homeless problem. I'm down for helping Israel. I'm down for helping address the situations with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, okay? I'm down for helping the Ukrainians and fighting off Russia. What about poor and desolate citizens here? How the hell do you print money for foreign countries, but you don't print that money to help eradicate folks that are starving right here in the streets of America who were born and raised? But I can't blame 50 Cent, for example, when he sits up there and he's tweeting, Eric Adams, I need you to explain this to me. What the hell is going on? Maybe we should consider Trump. When he says something like that, like you can see right here, what he's saying when he said it on his social media page, I can't blame 50 Cent for that. You want to sit up there and excoriate Ice Cube now when he didn't pick sides in 2020? When he wasn't telling you to vote for Biden or Trump, he was just saying, yo, I want to present a plan for Black America and see who's willing to listen. And Trump gave the okay and the impression he was willing to listen. You want to call Ice Cube a sellout now? Trump got 12% of the black vote.
Trump did not get that much of the black vote. What Trump got in 2016 was 8% of the black vote, mostly due to the low turnout, and he got 11% in 2020. So Stephen A's numbers are off. But here's the thing that Stephen A is not going to tell you about, because we are going to quote some numbers. African-American population has got the highest abortion rate in the nation, the highest abortion rate, okay, amongst all other races in this country. The African-American population has also got the highest amount of violent crime in all of the nation. By the way, they talk about gun control and whatnot, but the most amount of mass shootings in this country occur every day in Chicago, New York, St. Louis, New Orleans. Some of these, by the way, are blue cities and red areas. Not just saying it's all blue states. I'm saying that some of these are occurring in red states, which of course are very, very blue cities like St. Louis, New Orleans, Jacksonville, Florida, Miami. Miami's not as bad. Charlotte, my home state. Raleigh, of course. And of course, Phoenix, Arizona. Of course, you've got places like LA and San Francisco and blue states, Seattle or Portland, Oregon. You know, St. Louis, like I mentioned earlier. Of course, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Chicago. Of course, you've got Milwaukee, Detroit. Yes, a lot of crime, a lot of shootings are going on. Extremely high amounts of gun control in these places, but yet the shootings are still going on. Now, that's a different video for a different day when I start discussing crime. But you look at the crime rate, you look at the abortion rate, you look at not only the abortion rate, the crime rate, but you also look at the disease rate and who actually is dying of said disease, hereditary factors. It looks to me like an entire race of people may be getting wiped out, which is very, very odd and something that I've been saying for a very long time, given the fact that a Democrat politician like Chris Murphy, who, by the way, is extremely pro-gun control, says this the other night.
Negotiation didn't have a path to citizenship. It was entirely on their terms in order to get Ukraine funding, right?
Well, I mean, Chris, that's been a failed play for 20 years. So right. You are right that has been the Democratic strategy for 30 years, maybe. And it has failed to deliver for the people we care about most, the undocumented Americans that are in this country.
Let's play that one more time.
Been a failed play for 20 years. So right. You are right that has been the Democratic strategy for 30 years, maybe. And it has failed to deliver for the people we care about most, the undocumented Americans that are in this country.
They are replacing you. They are not only replacing you, but they plan on erasing you. That's the truth. And that right there is what Stephen A. Smith will never mention. You are being replaced. That is the real truth of what's going on here. That is the reason why this is happening. They are looking to replace you because they know that you are not going to be voting for them forever. They know that at some point in time you're going to wake up. They know that the culture has been self-defeating, and they know that the culture has been eradicating you for a very long time. Stephen A. Smith will never mention that, and I honestly pray that the man wakes up and actually sees it. But it makes me wonder if he's ever going to do that. That right there is the real truth about the situation, and maybe that right there is the real truth about Stephen A. Smith's recent epiphany here, which is what I'll call it. Exact same way I mentioned Anna Kasparian in the previous video, which, by the way, the next video I got to do on her, she took an L on. With that right there being said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and halt this video now. It was a relatively lengthy one, probably the longest video I've done in a while. Please tell me what you guys think in the comment section. Please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, please, guys. Also, please hit the notifications bell, and I will see you guys later.